You talked about the currency, very interesting topic. So, what did you see about the Thai baht, trend towards in the next couple of years, and maybe in short term, medium term, and longer term?
That's a really interesting one. It's interesting in so many ways. I mean, I think investors in particular ought to be looking at where currencies, seem to be heading right now. We think there, at this part of the economic cycle, as I've said before, we think there are three assets that are strategically appropriate assets to invest in. One of them is gold, which we've been invested in for about 8 years now. We think we've made most of the money that we're going to make on gold. Again, as I've said on this program in the past, we think that fair value for gold in today's market is probably something in the 16, 17, 1800 range. We think the time to buy gold is in the 14 and 1500s, and we were very happy to sell gold when it went to 1900, 2000 last year. That doesn't mean that gold can't go above that. Probably a realistic exit point for gold, again, as we've said many times before, is something like $2,500, maybe $3,000 at a maximum. But the danger is if you leave it too late, then we're expecting gold to come crashing down to possibly $1,000, maybe even less, and probably to stay there for something like the next 20 years, because that's how long it's going to be until we move into a situation of really rapid inflation. We'll probably have a fairly gentle inflationary recovery from the deflationary period that we're in now, but it's probably 20 years from the bust until we actually see gold starting to look like an interesting asset again. So gold has been an interesting asset. There's still some mileage in it, but try and make sure you know where the exit doors are. Treasury bills and fixed interest, again, they've been a very interesting asset for the last 20 years, but again, try and make sure you know where the exit door is. But one thing that's likely to come together is that we're likely to see this peak in gold prices and in treasury bill prices coincide with a collapse in equity markets and risk assets, as we said in the past. And currencies are likely to get very much caught up in that. So in the longer term, we've got a view that baht should get stronger against the dollar. It's a much more attractive currency. Growth rates are far higher in Southeast Asia. All the demographic reasons that support currency strength are much stronger in Southeast Asia. And also, if you look at the debt levels, well, Thailand has nothing like the debt constraints that America has right now. So in the longer term, baht should quite clearly strengthen against the US dollar. Now, that won't happen in a straight line. There'll be a whole number of things that could interfere with that trend and could affect that trend. Not least, politics is always a problem. But at the moment, they seem to have more political problems in America than we do in Thailand. So, so maybe that's something to be grateful for. But I think that one of the key things, though, the big thing for everybody to look out for, if they're looking at the world from a Thai baht perspective, is that when we enter into this last phase of the crisis, as it were, and I, like anybody else, I don't think I know whether that's going to happen this year or next year. All I know is that we believe it's absolutely certain that America's debt at some point has to be dealt with, Europe's debt at some point has to be dealt with, Japan's debt, and that really means a big crisis that's going to be an equity market collapse. As I think we've said before, we're expecting equity prices to fall by at least 30, possibly 40% globally. That would be in the States, that would be in Thailand as well. But at that point, we're also expecting that in a liquidity crisis, in a panic, in a market collapse, that there'll be a real flight to the US dollar. It's the easiest currency to buy. Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're selling, if you're going to go and buy something, US dollar is the easiest currency to go and buy. And so, in 2008, we actually gave a prediction at the start of that year that we saw baht moving back up, because during 2007, the trend had been baht moving down from in the low 30s down to around 30 and possibly slightly lower. And we gave a prediction at the start of that year that we thought that baht would go to something like 35. It actually went up to 36. We think that the 2012-2013 period could well be a repeat of that. So when we get really mired in the depths of the crisis, when we see equity markets come crashing down, when we see the gold price peak, then at that point we wouldn't be surprised to see baht weakened to something like, again, maybe 35, 36, maybe even worse than that, against the US dollar. So I think for investors right now who are looking at how to exploit currency opportunities, then whilst baht over time is undoubtedly going to keep getting stronger against the dollar, there is this short-term tactical opportunity to look out for of something like a 20% gain in the US dollar or a 20% fall in the Thai baht. When that happens, that's really the time to be loading up on baht and loading up on baht assets. So at that time, Thai currency is looking like a very attractive proposition, and we also expect that at that stage the set is probably going to be at something like 650, something like that, and that's a really good time to be loading up on the set as well, because that's